What's up, 8th grade? Mr. Agnos here, and today we're starting topic 15. Topic 15 is all about analyzing categorical data. That means information that can be fit into categories, but not measured, right? It's not something that we're measuring and assigning a value to. It's information that we're placing into categories. So we're going to see some examples of that here in a second. So 15-1 is about bivariate categorical data. I know that sounds really, impressive here, but let's break this down. Bi means two. Variate just means variables. Okay, so we're just looking at two variables that we can then fit into different categories and analyze the information and look for patterns. In topic 14, we would look at two things, right? But we would always measure those two things. Height and shoe size. Those are both things that we can measure, right? But what if we were talking about, color of the leaf and tree species, right? Like you don't measure a tree species and you don't measure the color of their leaves, right? But you can still absolutely collect information about tree species and leaf color and organize that information in a way that we can identify patterns and trends. All right, so let's dive on in here. All right, when you collect data, you record characteristics of the population. The population here, what they mean is just the group that you're looking at. So I just use the example of trees, right? So trees would be my population. Right? I'm looking at a group of trees, and I'm going to organize them by species and by leaf color. So the data they're talking about here says when you collect data, you record characteristics of the population, such as height or gender. These characteristics are called variables. Some variables, like height, are measurements. Right? When you figure out how tall you are, we get a tape measure and we measure it, and they have a value. Right, we actually assign a value to it. Here they say 64 inches. 64 inches, that is 5'4". Right, so that's a value. That's something that we can measure. Other variables like gender are categorical. Right, for example, male or female. Right, there's no measurement for that. You put yourself in a category. So measurement data consists of data that are measures, something that we can measure, like the length of with a scale. Right? Categorical data, which is what this unit is about, consists of data that fall into categories. So again, think like, elm tree, oak tree, pine tree, right? Those are categories of trees, but we don't measure them. So let's take a look at some examples. Indicate whether each variable has values that are categorical or measurement. Okay, is this something that we put in a category or something that we measure? All right, the first one here is actually pretty tricky. Zip code. So zip code, like the zip code for Pleasant Hill, is 94523. Right? Now, a lot of people might be tempted to say, hey, that's a measurement because it involves number. But this number isn't measuring anything. It's just a name. And it's a name made out of numbers. So instead of pine tree, right, for a type of tree, we're saying, well, this is zip code 94523. So this one is actually pretty tricky to start off with. This is actually categorical. It's just a name. Commute time. Well, commute time is a measurement, right? You measure how long it takes to get you to work. I now have to commute to work during lunchtime for the in-person learning, and it takes me 10 minutes longer, right? So that's something that I can actually measure. Tree species, right? We got pine trees and oak trees and elm trees and lemon trees. Well, you can't measure that. Right? You don't measure the species of a tree. It's a category you put a tree into. So that's categorical. City population. Absolutely, can you measure that, right? They go up, they go down. Concord has like 110,000 people, right? That's a measurement. You literally count the number of people. And last is eye color. Well, there's no number. There's no way to, you don't pull out your tape measure or your scale and say, what's your eye color, right? You look and say, well, it's brown or it's blue or it's green or hazel. So that's categorical. Let's see if I got it. I got it. And she does that weird dance. All right, moving on. Will data about telephone area codes be categorical or measurement? So telephone area codes. We live in the 925, right? If you're in San Francisco, you're in the 415. If you are in the Central Coast, where my in-laws live, you're in the 805. Again, these are numbers, but they're not measuring anything, right? They're just numbers being used for names, right? So this is absolutely categorical data, right? These are just placeholders for names. We could call this the Fred area code, the Bill, and the Susie, right? These numbers, this 925, it doesn't mean, well, hey, this is the biggest number, so it's the biggest area code, or it has the most people, right? This one here for San Francisco probably has more people. So the number really means nothing. It's just a name. So this is absolutely categorical data. And the answer says telephone area codes are numbers, but they are not measurements. And that's the key. We're not actually measuring anything. All right. So again, we're going to be talking about bivariate data. That means two variables. So here the example they give us is, suppose you collect data from a group of people about their gender and whether they own a pet, right? We're looking at two categories here. We're looking at gender and we're looking at, do they own a pet? So there's four possibilities here, right? You could have a male with a pet, a male without a pet, a female with a pet, and a female without a pet, right? And then you can organize the data into these four categories. And then look, do we see any patterns, right? Do we see any trends? So this is sort of an example of what we're going to be doing. All right, tell which survey you can use to collect bivariate categorical data. All right, the first thing that we have to think about is when it says bivariate. That means two, right? Two variables. So if you see a question where there's a survey and the survey has three questions, well, that's three variables, right? Each question is going to have some sort of answer to it, and that response is going to be one of the variables. So already I'm looking at survey one. It says, are you male or female, right? And then how did you get to school today? Okay, so we could use that for bivariate categorical data, right? Those are both categories. They're not, how you got to school is not a measurement, right? It's, you go by car, bike, walk, right? So this is definitely bivariate categorical data. So I'm going to put a little green check mark next to this one, right? We got two categories here. Good to go. Survey number 2, how many minutes does it take you to get to school? How many inches tall are you? Those are both measurements, right? They're not categories. This is, for me, this is now 35 minutes. And how many inches tall are you? Well, obviously, 75 inches tall, right? 6'3". That's obviously me. Those are measurements, not categories. So this is not bivariate categorical data. And then survey number 3, did you watch a movie last weekend? Maybe a Fast and the Furious film? Did you play a game last weekend? Did you do homework last weekend? These are categories. I totally agree. Like, we could use any two of those. The problem with survey number 3 is there's 3 of them. So we actually have 3 variables here, right? Which is why this one doesn't work, right? We have too many variables for what we're doing. So this is not bivariate. This is trivariate, right? We got 3 things going on here. So again, as you're doing the homework, if you see 3 questions, you immediately know it cannot be a bivariate categorical survey. Let's see what their solution is. They say survey 1 asks 2 questions, so it will collect bivariate data, right? There's categories here. Survey 2 asks 2 questions, so it will collect bivariate data. However, each question asks for a measurement. So it's collecting measurement data, but not categorical data, right? And survey 3 asks 3 questions, right? So it will not collect bivariate categorical data. Again, survey 3 questions, so it's no good. Survey 2 is collecting measurement data, right? It asks for measurements, so that one's no good. The only one that works is survey number 1. Tell which survey you can use to collect bivariate categorical data. What is your favorite type of movie? How many siblings do you have? All right, this one. Favorite type of movie? Horror, comedy, drama, action. Categories. How many siblings do you have? That's a measurement, right? I have a sister, so I have one sibling, right? That's a measurement. So that one does not work. All right, what about survey 2? Do you play a sport? All right, that's the categories in that case are yes or no, right? We don't measure that. It's yes, I do, or no, I don't. Do you want to go to college? Also, yes or no. So this one is good to go, right? Yes or no are categories. So this one is definitely bivariate categorical data. This one is not. Let's see what this little video is. All right, it says you want to see if there's an association between dogs being purebred and needing surgery. Design a survey to collect bivariate categorical data. Identify the variables, the categories, and the groups in which the data will fall. All right, so sometimes purebred dogs have genetic issues. And so I guess this is what this is saying is that, hey, is there a connection? That do purebred dogs have more medical issues, maybe because they have to be inbred to keep, I mean, there's some genetics involved here, but that's what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to figure out, hey, do they require more medical treatment because they're purebred or not? So I guess our first question here would be, is the dog purebred, right? So I'm just going to write is doggo, I'm going to write doggo, purebred, right? And your answer to that would be yes or no, all right? So that's definitely a category, right? You would say yes or no. So again, that's the variables are purebred, category is yes or no. And then the second question would be, did the dog need surgery? So doggo needs surgery. And again, the categories would be yes or no. So for any given dog, you would say, okay, is this dog purebred? Yes. Did it need surgery? No. On to the next dog. Is it purebred? No. Did it need surgery? No, right? And you would you have a group of dogs and you would go through and you do that. So what are the possible results here? The possible results are we have a purebred that needed surgery. So I'm going to say purebred that needed surgery. A purebred that did not need surgery. So I'm just going to say no surge. We have mutt. I'm going to use mutt that needed surgery. And a mutt that was no surgery. And so let's say we had 30, 40 dogs, or you know, we're a veterinarian and we see dogs all the time. We could start collecting data, and then we could identify, well, what group of dogs is most likely to need surgery, right? And we could see patterns here. What if every purebred, like what if we're doing a whole bunch of surgeries and every single one of them seems to be a purebred? Then when someone's getting a purebred, we could tell them, hey, you're more likely to have medical issues than if you get a mutt, right? And it would depend on what the numbers look like and so on. So that's the basic idea. We got our two variables here, which is purebred and surgery. Our categories are yes or no for both, and then these are our four possibilities. Okay, again, this video is to help get you started. The key is for you guys to ask lots of questions during class and then hit similar question after we go over it together. All right, hopefully this was helpful, and I'll see you guys soon.